Welcome to Cooking with Bourbon. I'm Nancy Kelly Allen, and today I have a sweet treat for you, bourbon balls. And who doesn't love bourbon balls? This recipe is almost 100 years old. It was created by a Kentuckian, Ruth Boo, in the 1930s. Legend has it that she heard Governor Happy Chandler say that a bite of chocolate followed by a sip of bourbon was the best taste ever. And so I guess an idea clicked, and the result is bourbon balls. There's different ways that you can make bourbon balls. Today I'm using the original, but if you wanted to make them with crushed cereal or crushed cookies, that would be fine. But today we're sticking with the original. I don't think I can improve on the original. So let's get started. I have some softened butter in my bowl. Actually, it's a half a cup, 1 stick, and I'm adding 16 ounces, which is 1 small box, of powdered sugar. It's an easy recipe. And I'm going to mix this. I'm also going to add a tablespoon vanilla extract. And I've added earlier, a few hours earlier, as a matter of fact, I added 4 tablespoons of bourbon to a cup of nuts. It actually may be like a cup and a quarter, maybe even a cup and a third of nuts. You can add more or less nuts according to what your family prefers. And I'm going to add, so that's 4 tablespoons of bourbon added to the nuts. Now I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon to this mixture. And it'll just make it mix easier and enhance the flavor. So I'm going to keep stirring this. I began with a fork, just pressing together the butter, sugar, bourbon, and vanilla. And finally I decided just to use my hands because the hands are my best kitchen tool. I've added the nuts that I earlier placed in my food processor and crushed, and added 4 tablespoons of bourbon to it, put it in a bowl, covered it so the alcohol wouldn't evaporate. Now I'm adding this to the sugar mixture, and I'm just going to keep mixing until I get it thoroughly combined. Just have to work with it. And as I mentioned earlier, some people add different flavors to this. They may add mint to it, peppermint, but I like the original better than any other flavor that I've tasted. So, and it doesn't take very long at all to come together. I'm going to mix it thoroughly, and then I'm going to set it in the refrigerator and let it get cold. Form it into balls, and at that point I'm going to dip it in chocolate. So I will be right back after it cools in the refrigerator for a little while. Okay, I'm rolling these into balls, just small bite-sized balls. And I'm placing them on a plate, and I will stick these back in the refrigerator. To let them cool again before I dip them in the chocolate. And you can make the different size balls if you want some larger than others, or you can make them all uniform. I'm just pinching off a little. Some of these will be a little larger than others. I guess I could use a spoon, but I just as soon do this. But it rolls easily and quickly. I'm not sure if you can see the steam on the pot, but when you see steam coming up and the water is simmering, then it's time to put the bowl on the pan. Make sure it's a deep bowl and a bowl that can take heat. This is Pyrex, and it fits tightly into the pan. It needs to fit tightly because you don't want water coming up and getting into the chocolate. So I'm going to add 2 cups of chocolate chips. And 2 tablespoons of shortening, and add them both at the same time. The shortening will keep the chocolate from hardening too quickly. So I'm going to stir that. And it doesn't take very long for the chocolate to melt. You can also do this in the microwave. You put it on for 30 seconds at a time, 30-second intervals, and stir it. It can easily overbake, so 30 seconds is long enough before you check it. And it doesn't take long to melt. This is how I've prepared my pan. I have a pan here, and I have lined it with parchment paper. Today I'm going to show you the method that I learned to dip chocolates. You just plop them in, cover it with chocolate with a fork, tap the fork on the bowl until most of the chocolate drips off the bottom. Then rub the bottom of the fork over the rim of the bowl and use the knife to slide it off onto the paper. That easy. Let's try that again. Let me bring the bowl over closer so you can see. Okay, here we go. I'm going to just drop it into the chocolate. Take the fork, spread it over the chocolate. I'll use my left hand for this. Tap it until you get a lot of the chocolate off. Then rub it against the rim of the bowl and on the pan. Take the knife and just drop it off on there. Now I'm also going to add, while they're hot, I'm adding pecan to the top of each one. When I prepared my water for this, I forgot to tell you this, when I prepared my water for this, I poured about 1/3 of the way up the side of the pan. Then it came to a simmer, and when it came to a simmer, then I placed the chocolate and the shortening together. And it took maybe 8 or 10 minutes to slowly heat. Let's take a peek at the finished product. Here they are. They haven't been taken off the parchment paper yet, so they look a little messy because I'm going to put them back in the refrigerator and let them cool and harden a little more. But here's a peek. I put a pecan on the top of each. That just cuts the sweetness between the pecan and the bourbon. That cuts some of the sweetness from it, so that they have pecans inside and outside. Some people recommend waiting a week to eat them. Now, I'm not that person. They are better, though, if we make them today and wait until tomorrow to eat them. So I'm going beyond the call of duty and eating one today, even though I know that it should ripen more. Isn't that wonderful of me? So here we go. Definitely taste the bourbon. I'll be able to taste it even more tomorrow. Some people don't add pecans to the inside. Some add pecans to the inside but don't pour bourbon over the pecans and let them absorb it. But I think they're more flavorful and have a more consistent taste if the pecans absorb the bourbon. Now, I did add another tablespoon of bourbon because I like the bold flavor. These should last, if kept in a dark, cool place, up to a month. So, happy cooking, and make your bourbon balls bourbonlicious.